everybody. Welcome to Read Aloud, Chapter 15, My Dog Smells Meat. Anne-Marie's mind raced. She remembered what her mother had said. If anyone stops you, you must pretend to be nothing more than a silly little girl. She stared at the soldiers. She remembered how she had stared at the others, frightened, when they had stopped her in the street. Christy hadn't been frightened. Christy had been, well, nothing more than a silly little girl, angered because a soldier had touched her hair that afternoon. She had known nothing of danger, and the soldier had been amused by her. Anne-Marie willed herself with all her being to behave as Christy would. "Good morning," she said carefully to the soldiers. They looked down at her in silence. Both dogs were tense and alert. The two soldiers who held their leashes wore thick gloves. "What are you doing here?" one of them asked. Anne-Marie held out her basket with the thick loaf of bread visible. "My Uncle Henrik forgot his lunch, and I'm taking it to him. He's a fisherman." The soldiers were looking around. Their eyes glanced behind her and scanned the bushes on either side. "Are you alone?" one asked. Anne-Marie nodded. "Yes," she said. One of the dogs growled, but she noticed that both dogs were looking at the lunch basket. One soldier stepped forward. The other and the two holding the dogs remained just where they were. "You came out here before daybreak just to bring a lunch? Why doesn't your uncle eat fish?" What would Christy reply? Anne-Marie tried to giggle the way her sister made. "Uncle Henrik doesn't even like fish," she said, laughing. "He says he sees too much of it and smells too much of it. Anyway, he wouldn't eat it raw." She made a face. "Well, I suppose he would if he was starving, but Uncle Henrik always has his bread and cheese for lunch." "Keep chattering," she told herself, as Christy would. A silly little girl. "I like fish," she said. "I like it the way my mother cooks it. Sometimes she rolls it in breadcrumbs and—" The soldier reached forward and grabbed the crisp loaf of bread from the basket. He examined it carefully. Then he broke it in half, pulling the two halves apart with his fists. That would enrage Christy, she knew. "Don't," she said. "That's my Uncle Henrik's bread. My mother baked it." The soldier ignored her. He tossed the two halves of the loaf on the ground, one half in front of each dog, and they consumed it, each snapping at the bread and gulping it so that it was gone in an instant. "Have you seen anyone in the woods?" the soldier barked the question at her. "No, only you. What are you doing in the woods anyway? You're making me late. Uncle Henrik's boat will leave before I get there with his lunch, or what's left of his lunch." The soldier picked up a wedge of cheese. He turned it over in his hand. He turned to his three behind him and said something in his own language. One of them answered, "Nein," in a bored tone. Anne-Marie recognized the word. The man had replied, "No." He had probably been asked, "Do you want this? Or perhaps, should I give the dogs the cheese?" The soldier continued to hold the cheese. He tossed it back and forth between his hands. Anne-Marie gave an exasperated sigh. "Could I please go now?" The soldier reached into the apple. He noted brown spots and made a disgusted face. "No meat?" he asked, glancing at the basket and the napkin that lay in the bottom. Anne-Marie gave him a withering look. "You know we don't have meat. Your army eats all the meat in Denmark." "Please, please," she implored in her mind, "don't lift the napkin." The soldier laughed. He dropped the bruised apple on the ground. One of the dogs leaned forward, pulling on its leash. It sniffed the apple and then stepped back. But both dogs looked intently at the basket, their ears alert, their mouths open, saliva glistening on their smooth pink gums. "My dogs smell meat," the soldier said. "Well, then they must smell squirrels in the woods. You should take him hunting." The soldier reached forward with the cheese in one hand as if he was going to return it to the basket. But he didn't. Instead, he pulled out the floured napkin. Anne-Marie froze. "Your uncle has a pretty little lunch," the soldier said, crumpling the napkin around the cheese in his hand. "Like a woman," he added with contempt. Then his eyes locked on the basket. He handed the cheese and the napkin to the soldier behind him. "What's this there in the bottom?" he asked in a different, tenser voice. What would Christy do? Anne-Marie stamped her feet suddenly, and to her own surprise she began crying. "I don't know. My mother's going to be angry that you stopped me and made me late, and you completely ruined Uncle Henrik's lunch, and now he'll be mad at me too." The dogs whined and struggled against their leashes. One of the other soldiers muttered something in German. "Why was this so carefully hidden?" he snapped. Anne-Marie wiped her eyes. "It wasn't hidden, any more than the napkin was hidden. I don't know what it is." Then she realized that was true. She had no idea what was in that packet. The soldier tore open the package. And then the dogs strained. Their muscles were visible beneath the sleek, short-haired flesh. He looked inside. "Stop crying, you idiot. Your stupid mother has sent your uncle a handkerchief. In Germany, the women have better things to do. They don't stay at home hemming handkerchiefs for their men." He gestured with a folded white cloth and gave a short sigh. "At least she didn't stitch flowers on it." He flung it on the ground, still half wrapped in the paper, beside the apple. The dogs lunged, sniffed it, and then subsided, looking disappointed again. Go on. He dropped the cheese and the napkin in the basket. Go on to your uncle and tell him the German dogs enjoyed his bread. All of the soldiers pushed past her. One of them laughed as they spoke to each other in their own language. In a moment, they disappeared down the path in the direction they had just come. Quickly, she picked up the apple and opened the packet with the white handkerchief. She put them back into the package and ran towards the harbor, where the morning sky was now bright with the early sun and some of the boat engines were starting. The Inborg was still there by the dock, and Uncle Henrik was there, his light hair wind-blown. She handed the basket. Mama sent your lunch, she said, but soldiers stopped me and they took your bread. She didn't dare to tell him any more. Henrik glanced quickly into the basket. She could see the look of relief on his face when she saw that the packet was there, even though it was ripped open. Thank you, he said. Anne-Marie looked around at the familiar small boat. She could see down the passageway into the empty cabin. There was no sign of the Rosens or the others. Uncle Henrik followed her eyes. All is well. Don't worry. Everything is all right. I wasn't sure, she said, but now, because of you, Anne-Marie, everything will be just all right. Now run home. Tell your mama not to worry. I will see you this evening. He grinned at her suddenly. They took my bread, eh? He said. Well, I hope they choke on it. There's only a couple chapters left. We're going to finish it up this week, so look forward to the next chapter in the next video.